my real intention when I sold the company, honestly, was to get into rentals, just to have more rentals for the cash flow, right? That's what I was looking for. I wanted that cash flow. I'd sold the company. I stopped my active income, and I needed that active income, obviously. I didn't have to have it when I sold my company. I carried the note on it. So I had 7 years to basically figure out, what I needed to do or what I wanted to do. But unfortunately, the guy that bought my company paid me for like a year and a half and then stopped paying. And then we had to take him to court and he filed bankruptcy and it turned into a giant mess. So that kind of forced me a little bit too, because I was relying on having that income, to just pay my bills and whatever. And I still had the chunk aside that I got from the down payment and everything. But once that kind of happened, it was like, it kind of forced me a little bit more like, okay, I need to really do something to have the income while I was fighting him on it. And when it was all said and done, we ended up getting paid, but not everything though. Of course, when he filed bankruptcy, they just
he filed
chopping.
bankruptcy. So he filed bankruptcy, Chapter 7, Chapter 11. 11.
Yep, 11.
Okay.
Yep. So it was a reorganization, even though we were obviously first creditor and everything on it.
Yeah.
Like he didn't pay taxes to the state or city the entire time he owned the company.
Wow.
So by the time it was about a year and a half to 2 years by the time he did it. So he had a year and a half, 2 years of even all of the money he had collected from the employees' paychecks, right? That they have to withhold for taxes. Yep. Filed all the reports, but never paid a dime. So he owed in taxes like $1.8 million, I think, in that year and a half, 2 years. He paid zero taxes, withhold everything. Like he had paid nothing. Tons of vendors that he owed because again, he didn't pay any of the vendors. It was a mess. He had about, with not including us, it was like $4.5 million that he owed. So once it went to the bankruptcy court, of course, they're like, well, look, we need to try to get it back together and keep you together. So we were not going to pay this vendor. We're not going to pay this. All the federal and state taxes, he negotiated all that down.
Yep.
So I kind of think, unfortunately, that he really kind of planned it from day one. I think that was kind of his intention. Because if you had intended to keep everything right, why wouldn't you pay taxes right at the beginning, right? But he didn't. From day one of taking over the company, never paid anything. So it was a mess. But when it was all said and done, we finally got paid out, not last year, it was the year before last. We finally got paid out the rest of it from him in monthly payments that the
So he was still running the company while he's going through Chapter 11.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Paying himself, his wife, 2 kids, and his sister-in-law. They were all taking a paycheck during that time because you're allowed to. It has to be reasonable, but what was reasonable though, right? Like his sister-in-law, he was paying her like $130,000 a year.
To do what?
To do the books. I'm like, really? To do the books, you're paying but there was nothing we could do. There was nothing the courts could do because they had looked at it and said, well, the size of the company, that seems like it's an appropriate number to be able to pay somebody. Didn't matter if it was family member or not. And of course, he was paying his kids, but I know for a fact that one of his kids wasn't even working there, and one of them was there part-time. And he was paying them kind of the maximum he could there, which was like $60,000 a year or $70,000 a year, something like that. And this was back in 2014, right? So $60,000-$70,000 a year back in 14 was pretty good wage. And then him and his wife both took salary, but it was minimal, right? It was like 30 or 40K a year apiece. But the kids were living at home. So the family income, he was getting $300,000 of income. Yeah, just to the family or whatever there. And as far as the bankruptcy courts, that was reasonable. And it was a mess. It was a giant mess all the way through. But
did you by any chance have any type of a recourse in terms of like taking it back from him? Have you considered taking it back from him?
I thought that I did in that whole thing.
Yeah.
And our attorneys at the time said, yeah, as long as he owes you at least $250,000, which he owed us way over that.
Yeah.
They said, yeah, it's good that you'll just take it back.
Yeah.
Well, he just kept, his attorney must have been better than ours. They just kept appealing and kept doing different things. So it kept pushing down the road where the bankruptcy courts are like, well, there's no reason to take it back because he's still running the company. He's paying you. He's paying these vendors the agreed upon price. And so that's what it is. And the court's the one that dictated what he paid us, right, off of it. Even though we were obviously recorded as a UCC and all the first filings because we held the note for it.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter. Didn't matter when it came back to the bankruptcy court. They're just like, whatever is reasonable in what it is. And,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, it's one of those where the bankruptcy court reduced ours, what he owed us, because he had said, well, I'm not producing as much money as they were. Well, of course you're not, because you didn't pay all these guys. So of course all these people aren't going to work with you.
Absolutely.
You're not going to have employees. There's just all these pieces, but it didn't matter. To the bankruptcy court and to him, it didn't matter. He had went from 47 employees down to like 8 employees,
yep.
in like 2 years.
Yeah.
Of course you're not you can't do near as much, right? I mean, you can't do near as much business and volume with 8 employees as we were doing with 47. So, but again, the bankruptcy court didn't care, right? It was just saying, well, this is what it is. This is what he's making now. And here's what his assets are.